In this video, we'll look at the collaboration aspect of grammar. Collaborate allows you to create new grammar explanations and sample sentences and link them together. These then become available instantly for everyone in the community to learn from. You can also correct errors in yours or other people's content, or enhance grammar explanations, etc. This part is completely optional. You can use grammar just as a reference and learning tool, using the grammar and sample sentences other people have added. But using Collaborate can help expand grammar for the community and also help make learning more personal. Let's take a look at the Collaborate tab. Just like other tabs, you can switch between grammar and sample sentences using the control at the middle of the top of the screen. In this screen, there are also two sets of filters for the list and an option for sorting. The first filter allows you to view only your content, i.e. content you have created, other people's content, or all content. The second filter allows you to view unlinked content, that is grammar that has no sample sentences yet, or in the case of sample sentence mode, sentences that have not yet been assigned to grammar points. Sentences don't have to be linked to grammar points, but it can be helpful, especially if there are not yet many sample sentences for a particular grammar point. The second filter also allows you to show only content that has errors. That is, a user has marked it as having an error by using the report error feature from the action button in the other screens. Finally, the option to view all content regardless of whether it's linked or has an error. The final segment control here controls the sort order of the list. You can sort by the date the content was created, when it was modified, or by its level. Let's have a look now at all content by selecting all content on both filters. We'll stick with grammar points for now. As with the other tabs, you can see the grammar title and explanation, and mark it for study or review. Let's sort by level. And then select a grammar point called question sentences. The top section is similar to the other screens, but you'll notice if we scroll down, there's a section called discussion. Using the right comment entry area at the bottom of the screen, you can contribute to any ongoing discussion on the grammar point. New discussion lines will be added when other users comment, and also when the grammar point is edited or an error is reported. This means you'll be able to see a history of how the grammar point has changed over time. You'll notice at the top right of the screen we have an edit button. Grammar points and sample sentences can only be edited in the Collaborate tab. If we tap the edit button, you can see that the title, explanation, and level are now editable. If we scroll down a little, from here you can also add dependent grammar points and link new or existing sample sentences. Let's talk a little about dependent grammar points. This is really used to control the order of the grammar point within the list. When you get to higher levels, the order of grammar points begins to matter less, but for beginner grammar points it can be quite important. By adding dependent grammar points, it means that this grammar point will appear below those in the list. It's a way of trying to make sure that the user has learned prerequisite information beforehand. For example, this grammar point about asking questions expects the user has already learned the XY grammar point. If we touch the plus button next to add new for dependent grammar points, we're presented with the grammar selection screen. It uses the same filtering as the Collaborate screen. You can select a grammar point here, or add a new one using the plus button in the top right. We won't do this right now, but after selecting or adding a grammar point, it will appear in the dependent grammar points list. The order of the list will then change accordingly. We'll cancel out of here for now. In a similar way, we can add or link sample sentences to a grammar point. Let's go ahead and do that now by tapping on the plus button in any of the vocab examples sections. When we do this, we'll get a prompt asking us if we want to link an existing sample or add a new one. This is really a time-saving device, as often you'll want to create new samples. If we tap Link Existing, you'll see we get a selection screen, similar to the select grammar before, but this time for sample sentences. You can also add a new one here by tapping the plus button in the top right. Let's cancel out of here, back to our grammar point. This grammar point is about forming question sentences in Japanese. Let's add a new example. We'll tap the plus button again, but this time we'll select the Create New option. When we create a sample sentence, we'll enter the learning language sentence first and then the native language translation. You'll notice there's a microphone button. You can use this to dictate the sentence rather than type. It might not always be 100% accurate, but it's a good start and can save a lot of time. For now, I'm going to type the sentence. I'm going to add the sentence Bengoshi desu ka? When we type the native language, we always do it in the native character set for that language. In Japanese, that's kanji plus kana. As you'll see below, we can see the phonetic representation, both as phonetic characters in the native language if available, and also as a representation in Latin characters underneath. This raises a very important point. Though grammar does its best to guess the phonetic representation, there are some cases where it may be ambiguous, and the pronunciation may be wrong. There may also be cases where the spacing in the Latin character representation looks odd. We can fix this by using the Fix Markup button. Let's look at this now. Here we can see the native Japanese, but we can also see what's called the markup. The markup has a format that allows you to declare the phonetic representation of symbolic characters. In Japanese, we can do this in kana. In Chinese and Korean, for example, it would be done in Latin characters. You can see from the format that it's quite simple. Those characters that require phonetic representation are put inside square brackets. The phonetic representation then follows inside the square brackets, but enclosed in squiggly brackets. Now, this particular word for lawyer has been split into two. It's really one, and because it's split into two, it looks a little odd in Latin characters. I'm going to fix this by putting it all inside one set of square brackets and squiggly brackets. Like that. And we can see now the Latin representation has changed into a single word, which is much more readable. Let's tap the Save button in the top right to save our fix. And we can see now our pronunciation characters are above a single word. And it's also represented as a single word in Latin characters. Much nicer. Let's type in the English translation. This question asks, are you a lawyer? Notice I put the U in brackets. The reason for this is in Japanese the U is implied, so it's nearly always omitted. To give the learner a clue that this is the structure, we put it in brackets. This is generally a good practice. When we practice using voice recognition, the bracketed words are also expected. You can actually insert multiple words inside square brackets separated by a /. For example, he slash she slash they. One and only one of them will then be expected during voice recognition practice. Let's pick a vocabulary level. I'm going to pick low intermediate for this. And then let's pick a polite level. This uses the des form, which is polite, so I'm going to pick polite. At this point, we can then add any number of alternate translations or ways to say. I'm going to add an alternate way to say where we actually include the word you. In Japanese, that is anata. Wa bengoshi desu ka? And I'm going to fix the markup here too. And we'll save our alternate way to say. And we can see now it shows up as an alternate way to say this sample sentence. You can also add alternate translations and ways to say while practicing using voice recognition, so don't worry about adding them all. We don't need to add linked grammar point here because we're already adding it to a grammar point, so let's go ahead and hit save. As we can see, this new sample sentence has been added to our grammar point. Let's go ahead and hit save again to save our updated grammar point. And if we scroll down, we can see at the bottom our new sample sentence has been added. This new sample sentence will now show up for all users. It will also be included when practicing using voice recognition for this grammar point, provided the user's level is low intermediate or above. We can also see a new line has been added to the discussion to say that the grammar point has been edited. We can see when and by who. Let's go back to our list of grammar points again by tapping the back button in the top left. We've seen how to edit an existing grammar point and add a sample sentence. Next, let's look at adding and removing grammar points themselves. The list screen also has an edit button in the top right. If we tap the edit button, we can see two things happen. Firstly, we can now delete grammar points using the minus button on the left of each grammar point. Please note here that you can only delete your own grammar points and sample sentences. If you want to delete someone else's grammar point or sample sentence, maybe because you found a duplicate, then you need to make a comment requesting deletion. You can also see we now have a plus button in the top left. This is for adding new grammar points. Let's go ahead and do this now. As you can see, similar to the edit screen, we can now edit the title, explanation, and the level. We can also add dependent grammar points and sample sentences. Let's create a grammar point about change in Japanese. We'll call it expressing change. And let's add an explanation here. This may be a little long-winded, so please bear with me. Okay, let's keep that there for now. We'll expand it a little more later. Here's our brief explanation. We'll keep this at beginner level because change is very important. So what I'd like to show here is that even though there isn't a markup button, since the explanation is always in the native language, it can still have learning language words inside. We can actually use the same markup format to show pronunciation above the characters, like we saw when editing a sample sentence. So, since beginners are generally not good at kanji, I'm going to mark up these verbs with their pronunciation. Square brackets around the kanji, and inside that squiggly brackets around the pronunciation. Okay, let's see if we already have some sample sentences using these verbs. Let's scroll down to vocab examples. We'll tap the plus button next to add new, and we'll choose link existing. We'll search for the keyword change. So here's a good one about mood changing. Let's grab that one by tapping on it. And we can see it's been added to the appropriate section. Let's go ahead now and save our new grammar point by tapping the save button in the top right. And let's change our list order back to create date so we can easily see our new grammar point in the list. Notice the markup is changed into pronunciation above the kanji. This kind of markup would also be applicable to any language that uses symbolic characters such as Chinese. We've seen how to add grammar points. Let's come out of edit mode by tapping the done button in the top right. And switch over to sample sentences by tapping samples at the top of the screen. And let's change into edit mode again by tapping the edit button in the top right. We can see here that in the same way we can add new sample sentences by tapping the plus button in the top left. Let's add a new sample sentence for change. And let's enter our new sample sentence. For Japanese, we'll enter kare to kite o koukan shita. We can see the pronunciation here looks good, but it's nice to see the shi and the ta together in Japanese since it's a conjugation of the verb. Let's fix that by tapping the fix markup button. And we'll just remove the space between the two characters. And you'll see when we change the pronunciation, the Latin changes too. Let's save that fix by tapping the save button in the top right. And let's go ahead and enter our English translation. Notice I put the I in brackets again since it's omitted but implied. As mentioned before, this is to give the learner a hint about the sentence construction. Next we'll select the vocabulary level. I'm going to say beginner here. And we also need to select a polite level. Well, Shita is casual, so let's select casual. We can now go ahead and save this here if we want to. It's okay to have sample sentences that are not linked to grammar points. In fact, when I'm out and about and hear a new sentence I want to practice, I often enter it here and save it without linking to a grammar point. Then I mark it immediately for review so I can practice it straight away. Sometimes I round back later and assign or create a grammar point for it, sometimes not. Here though we're going to assign our newly created grammar point. So let's scroll down to linked grammar points. And we'll tap the plus button next to add new. As we can see, our grammar points here at the top expressing change. Let's select by tapping on it. And there we go, it's linked. Let's go ahead and save our new sample by tapping save button in the top right. And there it is in our list. At this point we can either mark the sample sentence or the grammar point for review immediately if we like. I'm going to come out of edit mode here by tapping the done button in the top right. And I'm going to switch back to the list of grammar points by tapping the grammar segment at the top. And tap on new grammar point to take a look at it. We'll now see it has two sample sentences attached. Let's go back to our list again. We're getting close to the end of our tutorial now, but there's one last thing I'd like to mention, and that is the Notifications tab. Let's click on Notifications at the bottom right hand side. If someone comments on or modifies our grammar points or sample sentences, we'll get a notification message here. A red counter will also appear on the notifications icon on the tab bar at the bottom. The notification message will tell you who made the change, when, and to what grammar point or sample sentence. Tapping on the message will take you straight to the grammar point or sample sentence where you can comment or take action. This pretty much concludes our tutorial on the Collaborate features. It was quite a long one, thank you for bearing with, and as always if you have any questions or comments, please email us at support@rakutasoft.com. Thanks for watching.